For 3 decades following the end of World War II, the city has supported an extraordinary expansion of its public institutions, including municipal hospitals, housing, schools, and colleges, all staffed by a highly unionized and relatively well-paid municipal workforce. CUNY at this time is free and does not charge tuition for daytime students, though it does charge a fee to a significant minority of evening students. Indeed, since its inception, many young, mostly European immigrants and working-class New Yorkers have taken advantage of this policy to get a free college degree and climb the class ladder. Many have become journalists, politicians, doctors, lawyers, engineers, and businessmen, adding to the city's burgeoning white middle class, and a few have chosen to return to teach at CUNY, either as part-time instructors, tenure track, or tenured professors. Since 1966, a slightly larger group of Black and Puerto Rican students have joined the Search for Education, Elevation, and Knowledge program. Established by the New York State Assembly, the goal of this program is to provide more educational access to low-income students in the New York public school system by helping to prepare them for entering college. While SIC has attracted an exciting group of faculty to campus who are dedicated to its educational mission, some have grown increasingly frustrated that it is only available to a limited amount of students. There is also a lack of job security and tenure for the SIC instructors that is afforded to the rest of the faculty, and some students feel that some of the teachers, social workers, and psychologists hired to the work in the program lack a fundamental understanding of their lives and experience as low-income New Yorkers of color. It is a fledgling program in need of more resources, especially as CUNY begins to expand and considers admitting more students. On April 26, 1969, a press about free speech victory release. It is written by protesting Black and Puerto Rican students at City College. Offers insight into the group's motivation behind their protests in the preceding months, arguing for CCNY to better serve its surrounding Harlem community. The statement describes students' efforts to create a community-based educational institution that they named the University of Harlem. The students' cause for CCNY's greater community involvement lay at the heart of their published 5 demands. These demands, which called for, among other things, greater diversity and representation on campus, ultimately affected the early implementation of the policy of open admissions. We as white students can either be a part of the solution or a part of the problem. At Hugh P. Newton Hall of Political Action, we are attempting to become a part of the solution. This statement was written from within Newton Hall by occupying students and calls for the administration's unequivocal acceptance of the 5 demands. It argues that white students should join them in supporting the strike. The announcement of a meeting and an analysis of the 5 demands, which pertains to the need for greater diversity and representation on campus, is included in the statement. In solidarity with Black and Puerto Rican students, a group of white students occupied City College's Clapper Hall at 135th Street and Convent Avenue and renamed it Hugh P. Newton Hall for political action, after the co-founder of the Black Panther Party. Violence between pro-strike and anti-strike students and the police eventually led to the resignation of CCNY President Buell Gallagher on May 12, Nevertheless, the protesters' persistence forced the administration to negotiate and make some agreements related to the students' demands. This series of events was one of several that helped to pave the way for the policy of open admissions that began in fall 1970. In April and May in 1969, a handout was created by a group of protesting City College students, offers insight into the motivations behind a campus-wide strike. Black and Puerto Rican students, as well as white supporters, demanded the college meet these 5 demands that sought to reorient the college towards the largely overlooked Black and Puerto Rican communities in the college's Harlem neighborhood. Steadfast in their demands, the protesting students occupied various CCNY buildings that organized marches and strikes from April 22nd through the end of the semester. Violence between In a 1965 statement, Professor John A. Davis demands that his colleagues at City College take action to increase minority representation at the school. He writes that 2 years has passed since various units of City College have been considering ways of increasing the presence of Negro and Puerto Rican students in this college. Yet, he complains, the school has been able to do nothing, while other colleges have acted. As a result, Davis proposes, first, a desegregation program to immediately admit 50 students based on teacher recommendations, as well as GPA or SAT scores. Second, beginning summer programs for culturally deprived high school juniors and seniors, and then admitting them to City College with the help of guidance and tutorial centers. And third, helping to improve the public school through City School of Education. In the fall of 1970, the Board of Higher Education accelerated its plan by 5 years to implement a policy of open admissions at the City University of New York. In response to spring 1969 students' mass release and confrontations over several months that culminated in student strikes and building occupations.
In 1960s, New York City was undergoing a major demographic shift. More and more Black and Puerto Rican students were graduating from the city's public high school. However, they remained severely underrepresented in the CUNY Senior College. In fact, in 1967, only 13% of CUNY's student body was Black or Puerto Rican, despite the fact that they were made up nearly 14% of the public school population. At the same time, the civil rights movement was raising nationally awareness about racial inequality in education. Students were organizing, protesting, and demanding change, including riots at City College in Harlem, where the 1969 5-demand protest called for reforms in admission and a curriculum that could reflect the racial diversity of the city. In this climate, CUNY Chancellor Albert Booker believed that the university needed to take action. As he put it, I did not want a system where all the minority students were in the community college and none in the senior college. He was committed to desegregating in university system and making it reflect the city population. The solution was open admissions. And how did it work? In 1969, CUNY officially adopted the open admission policy to be implemented starting in fall 1917. The plan guaranteed that any New York City high school graduate who ranked in the top 15% of their class or had at least an 18 average would be admitted into a senior college within CUNY, though not necessarily their first choice. Students with lower academic performance were still guaranteeing a place at one of the CUNY's community colleges. Applicants would rank their preferred college, and those with stronger academic records were more likely to get in their top choice. Importantly, CUNY also expanded support programs to help underprepared students succeed once they are admitted. What made it possible? The SEEK program. A key support policy was the SEEK program, short from Search for Education, Excellence, and Knowledge, created by the New York State Legislature in 1966. SEEK was specially designed to provide access for economically and educationally disadvantaged students, many of whom were from Black and Puerto Rican communities. SEEK offered more than just admission. It included remedial coursework, tutoring, counseling, and official aid. In fact, it gives students who wouldn't have otherwise met CUNY's admission standard the opportunity to attend prestigious senior colleges and build academic skill in a supportive environment. The roots of SEEK actually began in 1965 with Cities College's pre-baccalaureate program, which allowed students from under-resourced schools to be accessed and supported over time. With the broker backing, this program evolved into SEEK and was scaled up across the entire CUNY system. So what's the impact? By fall 1917, Black and Puerto Rican students made up to 27% of the freshman class, more than double the proportion from just 3 years earlier. Chancellor Booker had originally aimed for 25%, and the actual number existed. Overall, enrollment at CUNY increased by 17% and dramatically reshaping the university student body and missions. And it's worth noting that while the policy especially benefited minority students, white students also gained. Under open admissions, the absolute number of white students admitted remained high, though their proportion declined as access broadened. For example, in 1979, 78% of freshmen were white. By 1975, the number has dropped to 13%. So in conclusion, open admission at CUNY was more than a policy. It was a transformational movement. It redefined who could access higher education in one of the largest public university systems in the country. Supported by programs like SEEK, it turned higher education as a right, not a privilege, into a reality for thousands of students across New York City.
In 1970, CUNY introduced an open admission policy aiming to break down the barriers to higher education. The policy promised that any high school graduate in New York City could enter a CUNY community college or undergraduate college, regardless of their test scores. The policy had an immediate and profound effect. The enrollment at CUNY universities increased by 75% within a year, and by 1975, the total number of undergraduate students had grown by 55% compared to 1969, reaching approximately 253,000. This transformation brought about significant structural changes. In 1969, white freshmen accounted for as high as 78%. By 1975, this proportion had dropped to 30%. Meanwhile, the influx of a large number of Black and Puerto Rican students transformed the campus landscape, with their share in the undergraduate college increasing from about 12% to 24%. To better serve the new student body, CUNY increased its investment in the SEEK program, providing tutoring, financial aid and the psychological support to students with weak academic foundations and low family incomes. Driven by student movements, disciplines such as Black Studies, Puerto Rican Studies, Asian Studies, and Jewish Studies were successively established, making the academic content more closely aligned with the diverse cultural backgrounds of the students. These changes not only reshaped CUNY but also set precedents for ethnic studies and educational equity across the nation. However, rapid expansion has also brought considerable challenges. The hardware and teaching resources of CUNY have struggled to cope with the reality of a sudden increase in student numbers. Classrooms are overcrowded, courses are in short supply, textbooks are insufficient, and a large number of new teachers have been hired, many of whom are part-time lecturers, resulting in uneven teaching quality and significant differences in workloads among teachers. Overall, the student-teacher ratio has widened, and the retention and the graduation rates of students have dropped significantly. Approximately two-thirds of students who entered in the early 1970s dropped out within 4 years. The policy has also sparked intense political debate. Supporters see it as the correction to long-standing educational inequities, while critics, including some teachers, conservative politicians, and business leaders, worry that it will lower academic standards and increases financial burdens. These concerns have grown louder, especially after the physical crisis hit New York. Even so, many community groups and the progressives remain steadfast, emphasizing that the policy is not about lowering the standards but about redefining the mission of public higher education to open doors for those who were previously excluded. By the mid-1970s, the original intention of open admissions was under heavy pressure from reality. The global economic crisis in 1973 rapidly worsened the financial situation of New York City. In 1976, CUNY began to charge tuition fees for the first time and transfer the financial responsibility of undergraduate college to the state government. A large number of faculty and staff were laid off. Infrastructure projects were halted, and the admission policy gradually tightened. Although the name open was still retained, its essence had been greatly weakened. It gradually shifted from the initial free and no threshold to merit-based admission and partial self-payment. Despite this, the impact of the policy persists. It transformed the ethnic and class structure of CUNY, enabling marginalized groups to gain more say in higher education and promoting the normalization of ethnic study as the discipline. It has become a reference case for educational reform across the United States, while also serving as a reminder that the ideal policies are difficult to sustain without adequate resources and institutional support. Today's discussions on whether universities should be open to all and how to ensure educational equity can still draw lessons and inspiration from this history.